jams. Then I moved on to my rich but healthy chocolate avocado mousse. But now it's time to take something we think of as indulgent, cheesecake, and turn it into something healthier. My blueberry skyr cheesecake is very low in fat and has no refined sugar, but it's full of flavor. Now, if you've never heard of skyr before, it's very much like yogurt. It's Icelandic in origin, and my husband's family grew up making it, so it's something I know well. I have 8 cups of skim milk here that I've heated up to 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, what I've done is just let it sit to cool down to 110. Now it's time to actually make the skyr. I've measured out a 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt. This 1/4 cup of yogurt serves as my culture, the starter, to make the milk turn into yogurt. So what I want to do is just ladle a little of this milk into the yogurt, give it a little whisk, and that way it blends into the base milk easier. And I'll pour that in and just give that a little whisk. Now, skyr is different than other yogurts in that it's also technically a cheese. So while I have the culture in there to give it the yogurt side, I've got rennet here to give it the cheese side. Rennet is an enzyme which is actually derived from the thistle plant. I'll measure out a 1/4 cup of warm water. And the power of rennet is amazing. It coagulates the protein that's in the milk, but it only takes 4 droplets. So you want to get a dropper from a pharmacy and then drop 1, 2, 3, 4. You can buy vegetable rennet online and from any store that sells cheese-making supplies. So I'll add this now to the milk and whisk that in well. So now I'll pour this milk into a large bowl. Give this a cover with plastic wrap. Now, to let the culture develop within this milk, you want to let this sit out at room temperature for 8 to 12 hours. And what I like to do is actually get the milk ready in the evening, and I let it sit overnight. And after the 8 to 12 hours, that rennet has gone to work, the culture has gone to work, and you've now made your yogurt cheese. So what you need to do is grab a slightly smaller bowl, a strainer, and then dampen some cheesecloth and line your strainer. And now this is a common step in cheese making. You have to strain the whey from the curds. And look at that. And you will be amazed how much whey comes off of this skyr. And now I'll just cover this up. So now this can be refrigerated, and I give it another 8 to 12 hours to drain. So the crust is very similar to the energy gems I made, a packet full of nutritious ingredients. Starting with 1 1/4 cups of whole almonds and 1 1/2 cups of chopped pitted dates and a cup of unsweetened coconuts. I do like to add a little spice to this crust. So a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom. I'll give this a little pulse at first. And a 1/4 cup of pure maple syrup. Just like my energy gems, I check that it's ready by squeezing it, and if I can press it together without it falling apart, then I know it's set. Now I have a springform pan, and I've greased the bottom and sides. Inside the ring of the springform, I've lined it with acetate. That way your cheesecake filling won't stick, and when you reveal it, you have perfectly straight sides. I'll press this crust into the pan, and now I'll chill this until it's ready to assemble the cheesecake filling. So what I want to do now is make that blueberry sauce. I've got 3 cups of fresh blueberries. I'm going to spoon half of them into a pot. I'll add to that 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and a bit of lemon zest. For the sweetness, maple syrup again, this time 1/2 cup. And just a pinch of ground cardamom. I'm going to let these blueberries cook for about 15 minutes over medium heat. And then what I do is puree this and add the remaining half of the fresh blueberries. But I turn off the heat because that way these blueberries retain their freshness, but the pureed ones thicken the sauce. I'm going to let the blueberry sauce simmer the crust chill, the skyr drain, and before you know it, I'll be assembling that Icelandic skyr cheesecake. You can have your cheesecake and eat it too when it's a wholesome version like my blueberry skyr cheesecake. Now what I have here is the completed blueberry sauce. What I did do was strain off half a cup of the blueberry sauce because that will add color and flavor to my cheesecake. The sauce with the whole blueberries I'll use to decorate my cheesecake and to serve with the slices. So before I get on to the skyr portion, I need to create something that's going to set this cheesecake. I'm adding half a cup of skim milk to a pot. I'm using gelatin to set the cheesecake, a tablespoon and a half in total. I'll give it a light little whisk. You heat it on low heat just until you no longer see the granules. There we go. Now it's dissolved. It's time to set it off the heat to cool down. So now it's time for the skyr. And now I'll open this up and I'll just place this in a mixing bowl. Add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So I'll give this a good whisk. It is nice and smooth, but I do want to strain it just to make sure it's perfect. Take my strainer and a bowl and just push it through the strainer. I think it's these little added steps that really do make you a better baker. And now I know my skyr is going to be lump-free. Now for some lemon zest. And I'm going to switch back to my whisk and whisk in this blueberry sauce. The last big step before folding all the ingredients together is making a Swiss meringue. So I have 2 egg whites here, and I'm going to measure into that a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. I'll take the maple syrup and egg whites, and I'll put it over a water bath, and just lightly whisking. It's not about getting volume here, it's about warming up the egg whites, but I'll make sure they reach 160. All right, now I can take the egg whites off the heat and pour them into a stand mixer. And you let the mixer do all the work and whip these up to a stiff peak. Yeah, I've got a gorgeous stiff peak. So now we can assemble the cheesecake. Grab my chilled crust, so it's ready. And by now, my gelatin mixture should be cooled, so I can add that right to the skyr base and fold that in. And now I fold in the egg whites. Now I'll pour this over top. Just take the time to spread it so that it's level. And like a traditional cheesecake, you want to give this time to set in the fridge, about 6 hours. And now for the finishing touches, the decor on top. I can transfer it onto my cake platter. And then peel it around quickly to reveal those beautiful sides. I've got my blueberry sauce, and I have some fresh blueberries to decorate, as well as some blackberries for a little color contrast. Let me grab my mint. I'm just going to spoon on some of this sauce. A little scattering, fresh blackberries, and fresh blueberries that looks different than the cooked ones. And then just a few sprigs of fresh mint.